Shalom, everyone. My name is Teresa. I've been to Israel 9 times, and it's one of my favorite places to be. You get to see the Bible come to life, and the food there is amazing. I want to bring some of those flavors to my own kitchen. I'm not a professional, but I love to cook and bake. Most of all, I love to learn. So, let's explore the flavors of the Holy Land together. Friday is one of the busiest days at the market in Jerusalem. Mahane Yehuda, also called the Shuk, is full of crowds, shouting vendors, and aromatic scents. But something interesting begins to happen in the middle of the afternoon. The crowds hurry home, the stores close their doors. Even the buses and light rail system shut down. Everything halts, and right at sunset, a shofar sounds from the Shuk. Shabbat, or the Sabbath, has begun. For the next 24 hours or so, from sunset to sunset, the Jewish part of the city rests, pausing the frantic bustle of a modern world. This is a holy time and the fourth of the 10 Commandments. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. The sacred meeting time between us and our God was set aside from the creation of the world in Genesis chapter 2. While it is tempting to move this time based on our preferences and schedule, there is something amazing about going with God's timing and resting in Him. And the Sabbath is something so precious that according to Isaiah 66, it will continue to exist throughout eternity. I, for one, have been doing my best to keep the Sabbath for over 6 years now. It's not as easy outside of the Holy Land, but it has been worth it. And, like in the Holy Land, every Friday evening there is a special meal with wine and bread. The bread of choice is usually challah. Have you ever wondered why we eat challah on Shabbat? I've wondered, so let's do some research. Challah is a sweet egg bread that is served on the Shabbat and on Jewish holidays. Often it is braided, but it can also come in many fun and creative shapes. It is usually made without milk and butter so that it can be served with a meat or dairy meal. Remember, observant Jews will not eat both meat and dairy in the same meal. On the Shabbat table, we usually see 2 loaves. This is to represent the double portion of manna the Israelites collected on the day before Shabbat. In Exodus chapter 16, verse 22 to 23, it says, "On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, 'This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath of the Lord. So bake what you need to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning.'" To further represent this event, the Shabbat challah is usually covered with a white napkin or cloth to represent the morning dew that appeared before the manna, and the challah itself is often sprinkled with poppy or sesame seeds to look like the manna that God provided. The bread is sweet because manna is described in the Bible as tasting like honey. However, it wasn't originally sweet until after the 1800s when sugar became more available. But where did challah come from? After all, bread like this can't be easily baked over a fire, so it is unlikely that this is what they ate in Bible times. According to the Encyclopedia of Jewish Food, the bread we know as challah comes from the European Jews after the 15th century. Before that, most Jewish groups used some kind of round flatbread, like the modern pita bread. This bread could be cooked over a fire. And to make their Shabbat version more special, often they would use a better or whiter flour, add something sweet, and or sprinkle seeds on top. What we use today is actually based on a traditional braided bread from Austria and South Germany during the Middle Ages. Jews from that area adopted and adapted the bread as their own for Shabbat, discarding any connections to the local folklore and Christianity. As the Jewish people moved throughout the land, they brought this bread with them, calling it challah. There are many theories as to this name's origins, but the most popular one says it comes from the Hebrew word for the dough portion that was given to God and to the priests. In Numbers 15:18-21, it says, Adonai said to Moses, "Speak to the people of Israel. Tell them, when you enter the land where I am bringing you, and eat bread produced in the land, you are to set aside a portion as a gift for Adonai. Set aside from your first dough a cake as a gift. Set it aside as you would set aside a portion of the grain from the threshing floor. From your first dough, you will give Adonai a portion as a gift through all your generations." By the 17th century, this bread became the main choice for and symbol of Shabbat. And today, it is a deeply treasured tradition of the Jewish people. Let's see if we can make our own version of it at home. You will need the following ingredients: 4 to 4.5 cups of flour, 2 tablespoons of active dry yeast, 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 cup of warm water, 1/3 a cup of oil, 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt, 2 large eggs, 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of honey, 1 egg whisked with 1 tablespoon of water for your egg wash. You will also need toppings like sesame or poppy seeds. Begin by adding your sugar and yeast into a large bowl. This is a lot of yeast, but it's to make the process go a bit faster. Pour the warm water into the bowl. If it's too hot, it will kill the yeast and we need them alive. If your water is too cold, the yeast will stay sleeping and lazy. Now you're going to leave that alone for about 5 minutes until everything gets nice and frothy. Now we're going to add all the other ingredients into the bowl, except for the egg wash, of course. Don't put all the flour in at once. Save about a cup of it on the side to add as needed. This recipe works with all-purpose or bread flour. The texture will be different depending on what you use. I'm using a mix of both. Mix everything together until it becomes a shaggy dough. I'm going to use a hand mixer with a dough attachment to speed this up a little. Time to get our hands involved. Sprinkle some flour on the surface of your choice and begin kneading your dough for 5 minutes or until it becomes a smooth ball. Depending on your elevation and the weather and the temperature, you may need to add a little bit more flour, so just add a bit at a time until the dough is the correct consistency. You can also tell it's ready if your dough bounces back when you poke it, and when your arm muscles are tired. Oil up your bowl and your dough baby. Cover with a damp tea towel or some clear wrap and let it rise for 20 minutes. It will get a little bit bigger, but our goal is to let it fully relax so that when you poke it, it doesn't bounce back up again. Keep in mind you may need more time if it's cold in your room. Punch down the dough. Flour your surface a little and knead for 1 minute. If you're making one big loaf, you will now be dividing your dough into the number of strands you will be braiding. I'm going to use this dough to make 2 medium loaves. You can also make 4 small loaves. After I cut the dough in half, I'm separating one of them into 4 strands and the other into 3. You can braid this any way you like. The traditional braid is with 3 strands. I'm going to challenge myself and you and do a 4-stranded braid. Let's hope this works. Now it's time to braid. My plain basic challah, I'll be doing a 4-strand braid. It's just like braiding hair, if hair was edible. I always have to look at a diagram while I do this because my brain gets confused if I don't. This other challah may be in a basic 3-strand braid, but I'm going to add some Chinese influence and fill it with a green onion mixture. To begin, I will flatten each strand out, put a bit of the green onions on there, and then roll it back up again. This is just chopped green onions, sesame oil, and some salt and white pepper to taste. You'll want to make sure you close them up pretty tightly or they'll open up in the oven. I'm having a bit of a tough time with that since I got some oil on the ends, so it's not staying shut. But you know what? That's okay, because it will still taste great. Now we're going to let them rise for about 10 minutes, and while they're rising, we're going to preheat our oven to this temperature. Right before you put them into the oven, you're going to brush them with the egg wash you prepared earlier. This is when you can sprinkle on whatever toppings you've prepared. I'm adding white sesame seeds to my green onion challah, so it has more of a green onion pancake flavor. And into the oven they go. For a big loaf, it needs to bake for 30 to 35 minutes. For medium loaves, 25 to 30 minutes, and around 20 minutes for small loaves. They're done when the tops are nicely golden brown, and if they sound hollow when you tap your finger on their bottom. So these taste pretty amazing, and they look pretty good too. But I wonder if we can get them to look even better. This time, I'm going to make a few changes based on what I've learned. To test this, I'm going to have the recipe from earlier. Just for fun, I'm making this a cinnamon sugar challah, so I'm adding some ground cinnamon directly into my dough. This time I will be using only bread flour instead of a mix. Personally, I like the texture of it more. We will also be adding a second rise. This will hopefully help our braid be more defined. So after it's risen for 20 minutes and you've punched it down, cover it back up and let it rise again for another 20 minutes. I'll also be adding a cinnamon sugar filling, made with cinnamon, oil, and brown sugar, and folding it in like I did the green onion mixture from earlier. Now we're going to bake just like before. But we're going to add a second layer of egg wash halfway through the baking process. Make sure to coat the pale areas that have been exposed as the bread has risen in your oven. Look at that! Much better looking, but still just as delicious. For those of you that don't have an oven at home, you can definitely make this recipe in a toaster oven. I've used 1/4 of my original recipe here. You want to make sure that the final loaf will fit inside. And if you don't have any kind of oven, you can steam your dough just like you would Chinese buns or mantou. And the final product will taste like them too. Mine doesn't look that great, but trust me, it tastes amazing. Time to bless our challah and have a taste.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lehem min haaretz. Amen.
Well, that's all for today. Shabbat Shalom. Bye. I'm gonna take these with me.